Hello, everybody, and welcome to Party Chat, our community Q&A for everybody at that $5 tier. Thank you for being here. My name is Ben Hansen, and we're joined by a bunch of people from the community, obviously the people at the Min-Max Council tier. They can call in each and every week to ask any question under the sun. But for the first part of this episode, we're also joined by a special guest, Shannon Liao. Welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, honor to have you. So there's a lot to unpack with Shannon here. If you do not recall, first of all, Shannon, I think number one on your resume had to be you were on an episode of Refreshed with Ana Diaz where you talked about Neopets for an hour.
Yes, that happened. That was great.
Yes, so thank you for jumping on that. And I remember, I think Ana messaged back when we were doing that where she sent me a message like, by the way, Shannon is amazing. You should have her on as much stuff as possible. And then you went to the Washington Post and you proved that you were amazing for several years. And then Washington Post dropped Launcher, their video game initiative, and you were let go. Is that the best way to phrase it?
Yeah, that's right. So I've been laid off, but my last day is officially March 31st.
That's got to be bizarre. So what do the next couple of months look like for you? Just trying to get as many dream pieces as you can out the door?
Right. So that's what we're hoping to do. We're going to publish some features at Launcher, and we're going to try our best. But at the same time, we have no obligation to publish anymore. So we'll just see what we can get to.
Yeah. How I know it's not a cool thing to ask, but how are you feeling? How are you doing with the news here that broke last week, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, just last week. On Tuesday we got the news. It was a huge surprise to us. We just thought Launcher was doing really well, and had been. So we were surprised to hear that Washington Post no longer wants to fund the video games coverage to the extent that it was before. And then, I personally, first I was just shocked, and then I was just very sad about it because, we had such great colleagues like Jane Park and other folks like Nathan Grayson, even our new editor who came from Kotaku, all of that. So it's just a shame that we won't be able to work together as a team.
Yeah. What was the message then that you all received? It didn't really dive into numbers. Just the overall takeaway was we at a very high level decided video game coverage, not so much when it comes to the Washington Post.
Yeah, exactly. They wanted to focus on their core business, which I'm assuming is usually political coverage and daily news. But we still have, so they're going to lay off the five of us, but Jane will stay on at WAPO as the only gaming journalist. So they still will cover games to some extent, gaming culture, but it won't be like the degree that you saw with Launcher with a huge vertical investment and investigative stories and video.
Yeah, not to make you speak for everybody, but how do you think the overall team is reeling with this news?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I can't speak for everyone, but just talking to them and getting drinks with some of them who are in New York, where I'm based, and then just seeing them on Slack and everything. Folks are just the same thing as me, stunned, sad, and talking about how can they recover from this and what should they do next, and just trying to figure out next steps because we thought we were going to work there for a long time, at least. Yeah.
And that is the thing. I mean, you all had you pulled some amazing interviews, but also I felt like you came back on my radar in a big way with the Epic versus Apple stuff. And it seemed like everyone was like, well, Shannon's reporting on this seems to be the cream of the crop. Go for that. And then obviously the Activision stories, the Diablo stories. What do you feel most proud of that you're able to accomplish at Washington Post?
Yeah, thank you for highlighting those. Yeah, those are definitely some big stories for me. I think the one that kind of demonstrated the sort of time and investment and energy that I was able to give to this, the fact that people just gave me a lot of leeway and weeks of time to talk to sources and investigate. That was definitely the Diablo 4 feature that we published on December, the same day as the Game Awards and the FTC suing Microsoft to block the Activision Blizzard merger. That was all happening on the same day, and we covered all of that. So it was it was a very busy day, and I think that the whole team supported us and pushing out that feature and getting really cool graphics to go along with it. So
yeah,
and not only that, but just I don't think a lot of people in games journalism have 3 months to talk to anybody. To put something together. So that was definitely a privilege and honor.
Yeah. How much of that do you think is just the Washington Post kind of infrastructure and systems? I mean, do you feel like you'd be able to do that level of reporting anywhere else, or part of it was just like tapping into that expertise and support from people outside of even the launcher pillar?
Yeah, now that I've been laid off, I was thinking about, can I do more of this kind of journalism if I were to be on my own? I feel like you kind of need the entire infrastructure of the lawyers looking over your story.
Right.
And, you have like a design team hiring out a freelance illustrator, and then you just also have to have the kind of like funding to give yourself the space to work on a story like this for 3 months, rather than posting quick hits and breaking news every day, which I was also doing, but I didn't have like the same kind of pressure that you might find at like a smaller digital media website where they might tell you to publish way more than you have time for.
Yeah, and that's the wild part is, I remember talking to somebody else in the game industry once just about like, oh, why don't you just go independent, launch your own Patreon and just have the quote unquote game journalism Patreon, right? And the part that I didn't factor in because I'm very naive is, it's the lawyers. You need the shielding of a large organization. If you're going to speak truth to power, people will tear you apart. And if you're just some schmuck, they're like, oh, I founded my own business. I have an LLC technically. It's like you're going to get annihilated when you're dealing with companies the size of, an Amazon or a Microsoft.
Absolutely. I mean, when we were publishing our profile of Bobby Kotick, the Activision CEO, he would this is like a thing where his lawyers were not happy, right? And so if we were just like one person trying to do that, I'm sure that the lawyers can take us down, right? But with the kind of like the structure and support of a large institution like the Washington Post, we were able to publish that profile without getting into too much, or like we're able to resist any kind of pressures from legal.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and also I know it's uncomfortable to blow smoke up your own ass, but the chain of events for Activision, I mean, how much do you connect the Washington Post and, your and Launcher's reporting on Activision, Bobby Kotick, and then the overall sale to Microsoft? It felt like everything that Phil Spencer has said, it was realizing that Activision was kind of in shaky ground, and that's when they reached out to see if this acquisition could happen. Do you connect those dots as directly as I do?
Oh, that's a really good point. I mean, it's hard to, so let's see. There's no like direct proof, but obviously the sexual harassment lawsuit, the settlement, the headlines, the strike from the workers, all of the negative things caused that stock to be devalued, and Bobby Kotick could negotiate that deal at a premium with Microsoft, just weeks after, or like publicizing it weeks after. So all of those events line up really nicely, but there isn't like, as Bobby Kotick said, the reason why he sold the company, according to him, is because the Diablo 4 and games like that were delayed, and so that stock price went down, and he needed to sell when he got a good deal. So according to him, it was because of Diablo 4, and then of course my reporting looks into like why was it delayed? Why was that game delayed? And yeah.
Right. Which is, that does not make sense from his point. It's probably the idea of his name being exploded out there in it's a horrific way.
Right.
Yeah. So people in the community, you can raise your hand if you want to jump up and talk about the future of games media, games journalism in general. Flick your hand down and off, whatever you want to do, we'll get you up here. But Shannon, I'm curious, you had a tweet that bummed me out, and this is uncomfortable. Let me just read this tweet that you wrote back to you. You said, reflecting upon how that dream job in games journalism just doesn't exist anymore. It does not exist. What do you want to do? Have you just reached full defeat about just there is no ideal games journalism gig for you at this point?
So I just said that because I was thinking about my own job at Launcher, which was a dream job in games journalism. I got that freedom and time to spend on stories that really matter. So I was talking about that job, but I was also looking at like the entire industry. I don't know that there was any other job like that one. Other games journalists would ask me, when can I get a job at the Washington Post? Can you put in a good word for me? And I was also trying to push for hiring more games journalists at the Post. But instead of that happening, even my job and the team has been eliminated. So that's what I was thinking about as like, New York Times doesn't have a games vertical, and there are there's like fewer game public or like media legacy media investing in games journalism at this time.
Right.
So that's what I was thinking about. But yeah, in terms of like next steps, I think I would like to try to do more investigative games journalism if somebody out there will let me. I'm just trying to push for that, and we'll see if it's possible. But it's definitely a place where there's like very few opportunities, and everyone here had to grind for it and just like become permalancers or something.
Yeah, I mean, you are near the top of the heap if someone is looking to do more investigative pieces and quote unquote games journalism. I know that has a lot of discussion and debate about exactly what that means and everything. But I mean, if that's what scares me. It's like if you're feeling pessimistic about you finding some place to land, that is a scary point. It's like finding Michael Jordan can't find anywhere to play basketball. It's like, what are we talking about here? That's a terrifying future.
Yeah, well, that's really flattering, but I believe I can find something. It's just more of like, at this point, every time you become a games journalist, at a legacy media publication, you really have to fight to explain to everyone why it's important and why it should be prioritized. So once you're there, you get all the resources, but after a certain number of months or years, maybe people at the top don't believe in your vision anymore. So I'm just thinking, like, do I have the energy and strength to continue to press them? Because it is important, but maybe people after me will have to follow.
Yeah. We have a couple people from the community here. Michael, how's it going there?
Hey, how y'all doing?
Doing good. Yeah. What would you like to talk about, or do you want to ask Shannon about?
Well, first I want to thank Shannon for being here, and thank you for your contributions. I hope that you lay on your feet. I wish you well on your next future endeavor. But I did want to ask you, why do you think like game journalism, like with as big as the market is, as much money it pulls in, why does it seem like game journalism has these unique challenges where it's always kind of discredited, or there's always layoffs? Does this also occur like with TV and film journalism?
Yeah. First of all, thanks, Michael, for the kind words. And yeah, I mean, I think it does occur. As far as I've seen, I've seen my coworkers, colleagues before, covering movies and TV get laid off as well. And I used to have to bargain for them and try to get them severance. So now it's like funny to be on the other side of things. But yeah, so the arts generally can be a cutthroat place to try to find a job. But especially games journalism, I think part of it is that legacy media publications don't understand what video games are. That's one thing. And the other thing is, like, if you are a gamer, maybe you don't read as many outlets. Maybe you just want to read like one game review. Maybe you don't want to read like a 3,000 word article, right? So there's a challenge of, can that even convert into readership and subscribers for those outlets that don't understand gaming? So it's like this terrible like back and forth of different groups that don't understand each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's even more extreme at a place like the Washington Post, but even at a place like, Game Informer where I used to work, it was always a discussion of like, what are we doing? We're trying to cover Destiny. Like, we can't possibly get as in-depth as the thousands of Destiny YouTube channels out there and podcasts and just the subreddit. Like, how do you compete with that? And that idea of like then trying to argue to a place like the Washington Post, like, no, all video games are important. We can do this. We need to get in this fight. It's really tough to compete, even with a name like the Washington Post, where you could get amazing interviews. I think because of that name, it would bring in people, but it's just the competition is so fierce out there, and there's so many other outlets for news, that especially a place like the Washington Post, where it's like, what, do I have to pay for that? I don't really know. Why would I do that? Where I can just go on Twitch and maybe I'll learn about a new game for free. It's a tough thing to communicate. And what was the strategy for trying to get the word about Launcher out there? Did you have discussions about just how to spread it, hopefully across the internet, so people knew that it was a place for quality games journalism?
Absolutely. So I would say that we tried really hard, and like I definitely tried to promote Launcher as many different ways as I could, and we actually had like decent traffic and performance. Like we were doing very well for ourselves. It's more of like, just like the idea of video games isn't respected at the very top for some places, and you can't really control what those people are deciding. But at the same time, like we did, promote on YouTube, like live streams. We did TikToks, Instagram Reels. Just all kinds of different ways of getting the name forward, and also going on Reddit, talking to gamers and posting about it. So yeah, just everything. I think we tried to support Launcher as much as we could, and it just needed a little bit more time to pick up momentum. And at the same time, like you mentioned, the paywall, like people thought that we were paywalled, but actually we understood that gamers don't want to really pay upfront for content. So we were just doing, free, not paywalled articles, but people would think, oh, it's a post. So I'm not going to click on this because I don't have a subscription. Even though we were free, they didn't know.
That's frustrating. Again, throw your hand in the air if you want to jump up and talk about any of these things. Andrew Burns, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks. It's my first time calling in. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great. What would you like to talk about?
Oh, awesome. Yeah, well, it was interesting. Ben and Shannon, I echo what Michael said earlier. I'm sure that, it's a tough time for you and everything, but I hope that you land on your feet and you find something that you really want to do. I saw that tweet that you mentioned earlier, Ben.
Yeah.
Said about that dream job in games journalism just doesn't exist anymore. And that was really kind of hit home for me too. I am not a games journalist, but I am a journalist. But I grew up, maybe like Ben, I'm not sure how early you got into GI, but I was a reader of GI like as a kid. And that kind of, it's sort of what sent me going in that direction. I got a journalism degree.
Oh, wow.
I've been a reporter since 2017 and ended up going in a different direction. I was in talks with, like, I talked to Reiner a couple times and like,
weird.
Yeah. And I was in talks to go there, but it just never really worked out. And like, I ended up going in a different direction. And now, like, over the last couple of years, it's been kind of interesting because there's just been layoffs just seems like across the board, not just GI and Washington Post, but it's just been, seems like everywhere, and especially with a lot of people that you seem to know, Ben. And so between the two of you, obviously you guys know a lot of journalists that have been affected by this. And I was just curious, just based on the crazy number of people that we've seen laid off over the last, like I said, year or so, are these people kind of like you, Shannon, where they kind of want to stay in the industry, or have we just lost a lot of voices at this point as a result of these layoffs and people just not wanting to, you're basically just kind of giving up, and trying to find work in more stable grounds?
Yeah.
Go for it, Shannon.
Oh yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for saying that. And it's a great question. I would say that, through the past decade, I've seen a lot of games journalists, move on to do PR, like public relations, or go become game developers themselves, or, just work on the game side of things. So I definitely fully expect some people who were laid off to go that route as well. I don't know exactly. I think we're pretty early on in some of these layoffs to tell. But I have seen other folks like, take on jobs at Kotaku. There are like some games journalism jobs out there still. So it's not like, it doesn't, like, no jobs exist, but it's slim pickings and everyone is like going for the same roles. It's always like a kind of like a game of musical chairs to see like who can still have a job at the end of the song. And
it's bizarre. I mean, just from people I know, it's like, okay, why stay in the games journalism path where the jobs are dwindling? You'll constantly be worried about the security of your job. The pay is not great. But then, hey, here's this concept called consulting. Would you like to go over here and make a lot more money and get to relax a little bit and not get, I don't know, attacked on the internet for your review of some RPG from Square? It's like, yeah, that seems like a pretty good life. I'll take that. And so it's understandable why people would shift away from the games media landscape. And the part that I keep thinking about is, with all these layoffs, it's brutal. And it's like, well, is the audience just not there? Is there just nothing? Is it that it's nobody's fault? It's just like that audience that will go to a GameSpot every single day, no matter what. Everybody's just diffused and everybody's checking out so many other places that you just can't have that big of teams. And even juggernauts like IGN will eventually get down to 10 people or something, and that it turns out is all that's truly sustainable. Shannon, what do you think? What's a sustainable team size for some of these bigger sites if they want to keep talking about games?
That's a really tricky question. I guess it comes down to every company's like finances, right? Like how much can you afford based on how much you're earning, and what is like the way that you're making money? Are you charging for it, or are you like providing free content, hoping like advertisers give you enough ads? Like it's just like that kind of calculus that I'm not privy to, but I'm assuming it's really tight margins and hard to pull off. And yeah, I mean, like 2 days ago, I went to like a party and just as an experiment, I asked like 2 gamers there who were like very into like the new releases. I was like, so would you pay for, like hypothetically a column where published scoops about like investigative games journalism? Like, what if I like could somehow tell you about a new Halo game, for example, and publish a scoop on this? Like, would you pay for that? And the 2 gamers told me no, they would not pay for anything,
right?
Unless they can play the game themselves. Like, unless this article somehow like gave them the game to try out or told them if the game was good, they're not going to pay for that. So I was like, wow, that's kind of defeating to hear, but it makes sense too.
Yeah, it's so brutal just to try and work through the numbers, and I'm sure you saw this in a big way, but like, your Diablo 4 story, it came out when there was a lot of other news happening. Still, it made the rounds at a big splash, and it was fascinating to have kind of a follow-up to the Activision Blizzard saga, and then just to zoom in deep on the Diablo 4 development and be like, hey, I know we all kind of want to move past it, but this is a very rough development with a lot of very special things for these developers that they're working on behind the scenes. A story like that, it makes the rounds on the internet. I'm sure we talked about it on our podcast. I'm sure other podcasts talked about it. Does that traffic get back to Washington Post? Did you feel like there was a huge bump in that proportionate to the amount of people that would talk about a story like Diablo 4?
Yeah, so that is also a great question. I mean, I actually got, I did promote that story with like our public relations team and asked them to like, push that out there. And they came back with saying, oh, you've been reblogged by like pretty much every gaming website out there. And that was like our report back to the higher ups. And so somebody who was at a director level at the Post messaged me saying like, incredible job, please do more work like this, I love this. So these are all positive things, and I thought, okay, great, next month, next year will be Launcher's year, we're gonna go all in on this. But that's what I'm saying is like, even though that did so well and the traffic did come back to us, and the reblogs definitely helped us, at the end of the day, they still decided to lay us off and shut it down. And it didn't have anything to do with how well that story performed either.
Right.
It just like was so sudden and random that like you can't really just like logically make sense of it. Yeah.
Andrew, Michael, any other questions?
Much questions. I would say something that's kind of interesting to me is like, as someone that consumes some video game media and everything, I think just my habits, it just seems like people get attached to like their favorites, right? And so like I think that's part of like why I think maybe it's so hard for there to be so many outlets. And I think one thing, as somebody coming from that was just a big fan of Game Informer, I think one thing that Game Informer did that was back in the day anyway was like it did a pretty good job of like really accenting the different voices that were on the team. I thought, like, I remember like way back in the day, like there was like this page where it was like everybody would have like their interests and dislikes, and like a little bit of, like personality. You remember that?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And then like obviously you guys had like the big web presence, like with a replay going back forever, and what you guys did on the podcast, like and I think like that helped whenever the layoffs happened, because like I just wanted to like still be in touch with like all those different voices, right? Because I got to attach to the individuals. Right. I think that for a lot of gaming outlets, it doesn't seem like I see that as much. Where it's like when I read an IGN article, for instance, like I don't really ever think about like who the writer is, right? Because I just I can't really put like a name to a face for. I mean, for most of the time, it's
an interesting question. I mean, yeah, for IGN, it's like they have plenty of podcasts and they do a lot of them get out there. But I mean, Shannon, is that just above the strategy for the Washington Post, or were there discussions about like, I know we don't want to go full on personality, but we need to have some personality focused content out there just to make this a little bit stickier?
Yeah, absolutely. We did think about that, and that's why we had our live stream every week.
Yeah.
We did twice a week for a whole year. After the first year, though, both like me and the other writers were like, "Oh, this takes up a lot of our time. We want to be investigating stories too." So it's this like tricky balance of like we only have a couple of folks on staff, and we do want to push our personalities forward so people know who we are. But at the same time, we have to go back and write and interview people. So it's like juggling multiple basically could have been jobs for people. Like these could have been like individual jobs in terms of how much work we're shouldering, but we're just balancing it all as much as we can. And so then like in the second year, I didn't go live stream as much, and you might not have seen as much of me, but I was able to do more stories. So it's a constant trade-off.
Yeah, that's tough. Well, Shannon, best of luck to you in the future. If we can help boost you in any way, let us know. If people, I don't know, where should people find you? If somebody listening to this is like, you know what? I'd like to hire somebody like that. Where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, thank you so much. So my Twitter is Shannon_LIAO. And you can find my email address, Discord info, all of that on there. So I really appreciate it. And thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, Shannon. Take care. Keep up the good fight, please.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
This was a clip from Party Chat, our Patreon exclusive podcast that airs every single Monday. The podcast features cohorts and friends of the show, contributors, talking directly to the MinMax community. So if you're looking for even more podcasts from MinMax, this is the place to go. Just head to patreon.com/MinMax with 2 N's, support us at the $5 tier, and you can listen to Party Chat every single week. Thanks so much, everybody. We appreciate it.